The cold bit through my coat like teeth, sharp and unforgiving, but I couldn't bring myself to go back inside. Not to that apartment, not to the shattered ornaments on the floor, the overturned Christmas tree, or the empty spaces where his things used to be. I sat on the front steps of my building, my breath forming white clouds in the December air, mascara streaking down my cheeks in dark rivers. I'd stopped trying to wipe away. Christmas Eve, the night when everyone was supposed to be warm and loved and celebrating. And here I was, 29 years old, freshly dumped, utterly alone. My phone buzzed for the 100th time. I didn't need to look to know it was my mother, calling from the family gathering I'd canceled 2 hours ago, after Marcus announced he was leaving. "I can't do this anymore, Lara," he'd said, his suitcase already packed. "You're too much. Too emotional. Too needy. Too everything." Then he'd walked out, taking 5 years of my life with him, leaving me with a lease I couldn't afford alone, and a heart that felt like it had been fed through a shredder. The street was quieter than usual. Most people were already tucked inside their homes, safe from the cold. And the loneliness that seemed to emanate from the winter night itself. A few cars passed, their headlights cutting through the darkness, but none of them stopped. Why would they? I was just another person, having a breakdown on Christmas Eve. Nothing special, nothing worth noticing. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stem the fresh wave of tears that threatened to fall. My hands were freezing, my fingers going numb, but I welcomed the physical pain. It was easier to focus on than the emotional devastation churning inside me. How had I not seen this coming? How had I missed all the signs? That Marcus was already halfway out the door? "Crying on Christmas Eve," a voice said from somewhere above me, deep and accented. Italian, maybe. That's either very dramatic or very justified. I'm curious which. I looked up startled and found myself staring at a man I'd never seen before. He stood 3 steps below me, hands in the pockets of an expensive-looking black coat, dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in old paintings, strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked black in the streetlight. He was tall, imposing in a way that should have made me nervous, but there was something in his expression, a flicker of genuine concern, beneath the sardonic amusement that made me answer honestly. "Justified," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Definitely justified. May I?" He gestured to the step beside me. Every self-preservation instinct I had left screamed that letting a strange man sit beside me on a dark street was a terrible idea. But I was so tired of being careful, of doing the right thing, of protecting myself only to get hurt anyway. "Sure," I said. "Why not? This night can't get any worse." He sat down, and I caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy with notes of bergamot. Up close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight silver threading through his hair at the temples, the way he carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from never having to ask for anything twice. "I'm Bernardo," he said, not offering his hand, just stating his name like it was a gift I should be grateful to receive. "Lara." I wiped at my face again, suddenly aware of how terrible I must look. "Sorry, I'm a mess. My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, just left, on Christmas Eve, while I was literally putting up Christmas decorations." "Ah." Bernardo nodded slowly as if this explained everything. "He's an idiot." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to. A man who leaves a woman crying on Christmas Eve is always an idiot. That's simply a fact." He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, an actual cloth handkerchief, like something from another era, and offered it to me. "Here. Your mascara is making you look like a very sad raccoon." This time I did laugh, a watery sound that was half sob. I took the handkerchief and dabbed at my face, wondering who this strange man was and why he was being kind to me. "Thank you," I said, "for the handkerchief and the honesty." "You're welcome." He was quiet for a moment, studying me with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable but somehow didn't. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight? Family, friends?" "I was supposed to go to my parents' house, but I can't face them right now. They loved Marcus. They'll want to know what happened, and I'll have to explain that he left because I'm too much, and they'll probably agree with him. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, raw and honest in a way I never allowed myself to be with strangers. Bernardo's expression darkened. If your parents agree with a man who abandoned you on Christmas Eve, then they're idiots too. You're better off without all of them. You seem very certain about that. I'm certain about most things. It's a character flaw. He stood, brushing snow from his coat, and looked down at me. You can't stay out here, Lara. You'll freeze. And I can't leave you here. My conscience won't allow it, and I'm already burdened with enough guilt as it is. He held out his hand. Come with me. I stared at his outstretched hand, my brain finally catching up with the situation. Come with you where? I don't know you. You could be a serial killer. I could be, he agreed, his lips quirking into a slight smile. But I'm not. I'm just a man who can't stand to see a woman cry alone on Christmas Eve. So come with me. Let me give you somewhere warm to spend the night, a decent meal, and maybe a chance to remember that not all men are complete idiots. It was insane. Dangerous. Precisely the kind of impulsive decision that Marcus had always criticized me for. But sitting there on those frozen steps, with my life in pieces around me and nothing to look forward to but an empty apartment and more tears, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was time to stop being careful. Perhaps it was time to take a risk. I placed my hand in his. His grip was warm and strong, and he pulled me to my feet with an ease that suggested considerable strength beneath that expensive coat. Just so we're clear, I said, trying to inject some sanity into this moment. If you are a serial killer, I'm very scrappy. I'll fight back. Noted. He kept hold of my hand, leading me down the steps toward a black car idling at the curb. A car I hadn't even noticed, which probably said something about my state of mind. But I promise you, Lara, I am not a serial killer. I'm something else entirely, which you'll discover soon enough. The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. But I followed him anyway, climbing into the back of the car where warmth and soft leather seats welcomed me. A driver sat up front, not speaking, not even turning around, as if this were a perfectly regular occurrence, picking up crying women on Christmas Eve. Bernardo slid in beside me, and the car pulled away from the curb, leaving my building and my broken life behind. I should have been terrified, should have demanded to know where he was taking me, but exhaustion and heartbreak had made me reckless, and there was something about Bernardo's presence that made me feel inexplicably safe, even though I knew nothing about him except his name. Where are we going? I finally asked as the car navigated through the quiet streets. My home, he said. It's not far. You'll be safe there, I promise you that. Why are you doing this? Why help me? He turned to look at me, his dark eyes unreadable. Because everyone deserves kindness, especially on Christmas Eve. Because I know what it's like to be alone when you shouldn't be. And because... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because when I saw you crying on those steps, something in me demanded that I fix it. I don't ignore those impulses. That's either very noble or very concerning. Probably both, he admitted with a slight smile. But you'll have to decide which for yourself. The car drove for another 15 minutes, taking us from my modest neighborhood into areas I rarely ventured, where the buildings grew taller and more elegant, where doorkeepers stood guard, and the streets were cleaner. We finally pulled up in front of a building that could only be described as a mansion disguised as an apartment complex, all Art Deco elegance and old money discretion. You live here? I asked, suddenly very aware of my tear-stained face, my rumpled coat, my complete lack of preparedness for whatever this was. I do. He opened the car door and stepped out, offering his hand again. Come, let's get you warm. I followed him through ornate doors, past a doorman, who nodded respectfully at Bernardo, but didn't seem at all surprised by my presence. We took a private elevator that required a key to operate, rising smoothly to the top floor. When the doors opened, they revealed an apartment that took my breath away, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city. Furniture that was clearly antique, but well-loved. Art on the walls that looked museum quality. This wasn't just wealth. This was generational. Old-world wealth, the kind that came with history and power. "Welcome," Bernardo said, shrugging out of his coat and hanging it in a closet. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll put on some coffee, or tea if you prefer. You look like you need something warm." "Coffee?" I managed, still trying to process my surroundings. "Thank you." He disappeared into what I assumed was the kitchen, leaving me standing in the center of his living room, like a lost child. I moved toward the windows, drawn to the view of the city, spreading out below like a carpet of lights. From up here, everything looked beautiful, orderly, safe, not like the messy, painful reality I'd been living in. Just an hour ago. Beautiful, isn't it? Bernardo returned, with 2 cups of coffee, and handed me one. Sometimes I stand here for hours, just watching the city move. It reminds me that life continues, no matter what personal dramas we're experiencing. I took a sip of the coffee, rich and intense, exactly what I needed. "You said you know what it's like to be alone, when you shouldn't be." "What did you mean?" He was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the city below. "I lost someone once. Someone important. It wasn't Christmas Eve, but it was close enough. And I spent that holiday alone, drowning in regret and anger and grief. No one came to help me. No one thought to check if I was okay. I survived it. But I promised myself that if I ever saw someone else in that position, I wouldn't walk past them. I'd stop. I'd help." He turned to look at me. "So that's why I'm helping you, Lara, because I remember what it feels like, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone." The honesty in his voice, the raw pain that flickered across his face, it broke something open inside me. Here was this powerful, wealthy man, admitting to vulnerability, to having been broken once. It made him real, in a way I hadn't expected. "I'm sorry," I said softly, "for whatever happened to you. Don't be. It made me who I am, just as tonight is shaping who you'll become." He set down his coffee and gestured toward a hallway. "Come, let me show you where you'll sleep. You need rest, and in the morning, things will look different. Not necessarily better, but different. Sometimes that's enough." He led me to a guest room that was more luxurious than any hotel I'd ever stayed in. A massive bed with soft linens, an attached bathroom with a soaking tub, and more of those stunning windows overlooking the city. "There are clothes in the closet that might fit you," Bernardo said. "My sister stays here sometimes. Help yourself to anything you need. And Lara," he paused at the door, "you're safe here. Whatever else happens, know that." After he left, I stood in the center of the room, trying to make sense of the past hour. I'd gone from crying on frozen steps to standing in a luxury apartment owned by a mysterious man who spoke like a poet and looked at me like I was something precious he'd found. It was surreal, possibly dangerous, definitely the most impulsive thing I'd ever done. But as I showered in the enormous bathroom, washing away the remnants of my tears and my ruined makeup, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, my life could be different from what I'd imagined. That maybe being too much wasn't a flaw, but a gift I'd been giving to the wrong person. I borrowed a soft sweater and pajama pants from the closet. They fit surprisingly well, and emerged from the bedroom to find Bernardo in the kitchen, actually cooking. The scent of garlic and olive oil filled the air, homey and comforting, in a way that made my chest ache. "I hope you're hungry," he said, without turning around. "I'm making pasta. It's simple, but it's Christmas Eve, and no one should spend Christmas Eve without a proper meal." "You cook?" I settled onto a bar stool at the kitchen island, watching him move around the space with practiced ease. "My nonna taught me. She said a man who can't feed himself is half a man." He glanced at me with a slight smile. She had extreme opinions about masculinity. She sounds wise. She was. She also used to say that the best way to heal a broken heart is with good food and better company. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Eat, talk if you want to, and remind you that one idiot man doesn't define your worth. As he cooked, we talked. He asked me about my work. I was a graphic designer for a small firm and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. He told me about his own work, though he was vague about the details, mentioning family business and various enterprises in a way that suggested he didn't want to elaborate. I should have pressed him, should have demanded to know more about this man. I was trusting with my safety, but I was tired of being suspicious, of protecting myself, of always waiting for the other shoe to drop. The pasta was incredible, perfect but straightforward, with just the right amount of garlic and oil, topped with fresh parmesan. We ate at his dining table, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, like we were dining among the stars. "Can I ask you something?" I said between bites. "And will you promise to answer honestly?" I always answer honestly. It's lies that require too much effort. His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Ask, why did you really stop to talk to me? Beautiful women must cry every day in this city. What made you stop for me?" He set down his fork, considering the question seriously. "Because when I saw you, I saw myself 3 years ago, broken, alone, believing I deserved the pain I was feeling. And I remembered how desperately I'd wanted someone, anyone, to tell me that I didn't deserve it, that I was worth more than the person who'd left me had made me believe. So I stopped, because I could give you what no one gave me, a voice saying that you matter, that you're worth helping, that the pain you're feeling now doesn't define your future." Tears pricked at my eyes again, but this time they weren't from grief. They were from the overwhelming kindness of this strange, intense man who'd appeared in my life at precisely the moment I needed him most. "Thank you," I whispered, "for stopping, for caring, for this." I gestured at the meal, the apartment, the entire surreal situation. "I don't know what I did to deserve it, but thank you. You deserved it, simply by existing. Lara, that's how kindness should work." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly, before returning to his meal. "Now eat. You need your strength. Tomorrow is Christmas, and I have plans for us." "Plans?" "Yes, but they're a surprise. You'll have to trust me." That slight smile played at his lips again. "Think you can do that?" I looked at this man who'd rescued me from my lowest moment, who'd fed me and given me shelter, and treated me like I was worth something when I felt like nothing. "Yes," I said. "I think I can trust you." What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that trusting Bernardo Piras would change my life in ways I couldn't imagine. That the man sitting across from me, casually eating pasta and making me laugh, was not just wealthy or mysterious, but dangerous in ways I was only beginning to understand. But that discovery would come later. For now, on this Christmas Eve that had started with heartbreak and tears, I let myself be grateful for unexpected kindness, for a warm meal, and for a man who'd stopped to help me when he had absolutely no reason to do so. Sometimes, that's all we need to survive our darkest nights, someone who cares enough to stop. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows in a moment of complete disorientation. The bed was too soft, the sheets too delicate, the room too beautiful. Then memory returned. Marcus leaving, the cold steps, Bernardo's outstretched hand. I sat up, half expecting to discover it had all been some grief-induced hallucination, but no. I was still in Bernardo's guest room, still wearing borrowed clothes, still trying to make sense of the past 12 hours. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Lara?" Bernardo's voice muffled through the wood. "Are you awake? I have coffee and something I think you'll like." "Come in," I called, suddenly very aware that my hair was probably a disaster and I had no makeup on. He entered carrying a tray with coffee, fresh pastries, and what looked like a small wrapped package. He'd changed from last night's expensive suit into dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made him look more approachable, though no less imposing. "Merry Christmas," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected, honestly." I reached for the coffee gratefully. "You didn't have to bring me breakfast in bed." "I wanted to. Besides, it's Christmas. There are rules about Christmas morning, and one of them is that no one should face it alone." He sat in the armchair by the window, looking entirely at ease. "The gift is for you, by the way." I stared at the wrapped package. "Bernardo, you don't even know me. You can't give me presents." "I can do whatever I want. That's one of the perks of being—" He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. "Of being financially comfortable. Open it." With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the package to find a leather journal, the kind with thick, creamy pages that practically begged to be filled with words or sketches. It was beautiful, clearly expensive, and completely unexpected. "It's gorgeous," I breathed. "I thought you might need it, a place to process everything that's happening. To design, to draw, to write, whatever helps." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Last night was the ending of something, Lara, but endings are also beginnings. That journal is for your new beginning." The thoughtfulness of it hit me harder than any expensive jewelry could have. This wasn't a generic gift. It was personal, considered, perfect. "Thank you," I said, clutching the journal to my chest. No one has ever given me something this thoughtful before." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people." He stood, moving toward the door. "Get dressed. I want to show you something. The clothes in the closet should fit you. My sister and I have a similar build to you." "About your sister," I started, curiosity finally getting the better of me. "When will she be here? Won't she mind that you've invited a random woman into her space?" Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "My sister died 2 years ago. The clothes were hers. She'd want them to be used, to help someone." He said it simply, but I could hear the grief underneath the words. "Oh God, Bernardo, I'm so sorry. I didn't know—" "How could you? It's fine. She was sick for a long time. We knew it was coming." He paused at the door. "She would have liked you, I think. She always had a soft spot for people who felt too much. She said they were the only ones really living." After he left, I sat with his words, with the journal, with the growing understanding that Bernardo Pires was far more complex than I'd initially thought. He wasn't just a wealthy man with a kind streak. He was someone who'd known real loss, real pain, and had somehow transmuted it into compassion for a stranger. I showered and dressed in a pair of dark jeans and a soft cashmere sweater that I found in the closet. They fit perfectly, and I tried not to think too hard about wearing a dead woman's clothes. If Bernardo said his sister would have wanted it, I chose to believe him. When I emerged, I found him waiting in the living room, staring out at the city with his hands in his pockets. He turned when he heard me, and his expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. Approval mixed with something more profound, more complicated. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready for what?" "To see my Christmas surprise for you." He grabbed his coat and handed me one from the closet. His sister's, probably, a beautiful wool coat that was warmer than anything I owned. "Trust me?" I thought about it for approximately 2 seconds. Yes. We took his car, the same one from last night, with the same silent driver. We drove through the city, which was quieter than usual, most people inside with their families, celebrating the holiday I'd almost forgotten about. Bernardo didn't tell me where we were going. He just sat beside me, a slight smile playing at his lips, clearly enjoying the suspense. Finally, we pulled up in front of a building I recognized, a children's hospital I'd donated to a few times when I had extra money. "Why are we here?" I asked. "Because Christmas should be about joy, and I can't think of anything more joyful than seeing children smile. He opened the car door. "Come on, we're expected." Inside, a nurse greeted Bernardo by name and led us to a large playroom decorated for Christmas. Children of various ages were scattered throughout, some in wheelchairs, some with IV poles, all of them dealing with illnesses I could only imagine. But when Bernardo entered, their faces lit up. "Mr. Puras!" A little girl with no hair and the biggest smile I'd ever seen wheeled herself over. "You came, and you brought a friend." "I did, Sophia. This is my friend Lara. Lara, this is Sophia. She's the boss around here, so we have to do whatever she says." Bernardo crouched down to the girl's level, his entire demeanor softening in a way I hadn't seen before. For the next 3 hours, we played with the children, helped them open presents that Bernardo had apparently arranged to be delivered, and listened to their stories. Bernardo knew most of them by name, knew their conditions, and knew their families. This wasn't a one-time thing or a photo opportunity. He was genuinely connected to these kids, genuinely invested in their happiness. "You come here often," I said during a quiet moment while he was helping a little boy set up a new video game. "Every week," he admitted. "I started coming after my sister died. She spent so much time in hospitals, and I saw how much small kindnesses mattered. So I started visiting, bringing gifts, just spending time with kids who needed to know someone cared." He looked at me. "I know what it's like to feel forgotten, Lara. I won't let these kids feel that way if I can help it." My heart cracked open even further. This man, this mysterious, wealthy, intense man, spent his free time visiting sick children. Not for publicity, not for tax write-offs, but because he genuinely cared. Because he'd known pain and wanted to prevent others from feeling it. "You're a good man, Bernardo Puras," I said softly. "Don't be so sure about that," he replied with a strange smile. "You don't know everything about me yet." It was the second time he'd hinted at something darker in his life, something he was keeping from me. But overseeing him help a child struggling with coordination to open a present, I couldn't bring myself to believe he was anything but good. We left the hospital as the winter sun was beginning to set, the sky turning pink and gold over the city. In the car, Bernardo was quieter than before, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for today," I said, "for showing me that, for letting me be part of it." "I wanted you to understand something," he said, turning to look at me. "Last night, you were crying because a man made you believe you were too much. But too much is only a problem for people who don't have the capacity to handle depth. Those children in there, they're dealing with illness and pain and uncertainty, and they don't think twice about feeling deeply, about loving fiercely, about being fully present in their emotions. They're too much by your ex's standards, and they're perfect exactly as they are, just like you." Tears sprang to my eyes for what felt like the 100th time in 24 hours. "How do you know exactly what to say?" "Because I've spent years wishing someone had said it to me. So I'm saying it to you." He reached over and took my hand, his thumb brushing across, my knuckles in a gesture that felt both comforting and electric. "You're not too much, Lara. You're exactly enough. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." We drove back to his apartment in comfortable silence, my hand still in his. When we arrived, he made dinner, another perfect but straightforward Italian meal, and we ate while watching old Christmas movies on his enormous television. It was domestic and comfortable in a way. That should have felt strange, but somehow didn't. "Can I ask you something?" I said during a lull in the movie. "Always. Why aren't you spending Christmas with your family? You must have parents, other relatives. Why are you here with me instead?" His expression darkened slightly. "My family and I have a complicated relationship. My father wanted me to be one thing, and I chose to be something else. It created a rift that never quite healed, and after my sister died, it got worse. So now I spend holidays helping others, rather than subjecting myself to family drama that benefits no one. I'm sorry. That sounds lonely." It was, until last night when I found a woman crying on frozen steps and decided to stop. He looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You've given me something I didn't expect. Lara. Purpose. a reason to care about this holiday again. So thank you for that. I'm the one who should be thanking you. You saved me from the worst night of my life. We saved each other, he corrected. That's how the best connections work. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. Marcus. I stared at his name on the screen, my finger hovering over the answer button. What could he possibly want? To apologize? To try to come back? 6 months ago, I would have answered immediately, desperate to hear his voice. But now, after everything Bernardo had shown me, everything he'd helped me understand about my own worth, I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear what Marcus had to say. I already knew I deserved better. The next few days fell into an easy rhythm. Bernardo went to work, still vague about what that work actually entailed, and I spent the time exploring his apartment, sketching in my new journal, and slowly piecing my life back together. In the evenings, he'd return, and we'd cook together, talking about everything and nothing, building a connection that felt both fragile and incredibly strong. On the third day, his phone rang during dinner. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The relaxed, open man I'd been getting to know disappeared, replaced by something more challenging, more guarded. I need to take this, he said, standing. Excuse me. He went into his study, closing the door firmly behind him. I tried not to listen, but the apartment was quiet enough that his raised voice carried through the walls. He was speaking Italian, so I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. He was angry, maybe even threatening. It went on for 10 minutes before he finally emerged, his expression thunderous. Is everything okay? I asked carefully. It's fine. Just business. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I hadn't seen from him before. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Bernardo, what do you do? Really? I stood up, moving closer to him. You're vague about your work. You have this incredible apartment. You seem to have unlimited money and resources, and people are calling you at night, making you angry enough to yell. What aren't you telling me? He looked at me for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. You're right. You deserve the truth. But I'm afraid that when I tell you, you'll want to leave. And selfishly, I don't want you to leave. Tell me anyway, I said. I'd rather know the truth than wonder. He walked to the window, staring out at the city as he spoke. My family name is Piras. In certain circles, that name means something specific. It means power, control, and yes, sometimes violence. We're not businessmen in the conventional sense, Lara. We're what people politely call organized crime. What others less politely call the Mafia. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. I should have been shocked, terrified, running for the door. But somehow, I wasn't. Maybe I'd suspected something like this. Perhaps the pieces had been there all along. The deference people showed him, the expensive lifestyle, the hints he'd dropped about his father wanting him to be something he wasn't. So you're a mobster? I asked, testing the word in my mouth. I prefer family businessman, but yes, essentially. He turned to face me. I inherited the role from my father. I didn't want it, but I took it because someone had to, and I thought I could do it better than the alternatives. I've tried to make our operations less violent and more legitimate, but there are still aspects of what we do that fall into moral gray areas, and there are people, rival families, law enforcement, others, who would love to see me fail or dead. Is that why you were yelling on the phone? Someone threatening you? Someone threatening people I care about, which, as of 3 days ago, includes you. He crossed back to me, his dark eyes searching my face. I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest before you got invested in being here. But I was selfish. I liked having you around. I liked feeling normal for once, like just a man spending time with a woman he finds fascinating. I'm sorry I wasn't forthright. I processed this information, trying to reconcile the kind man who visited sick children with the criminal he was describing. Have you killed people? I asked bluntly. Not personally, no. But I've given orders that resulted in violence. I've made decisions that hurt people, I'm not innocent, Laura. I want to be clear about that. He took a breath. If you want to leave, I'll have my driver take you home right now. No questions, no judgment. You didn't sign up for this. I thought about my options. I could leave, go back to my apartment with its broken ornaments and memories of Marcus, and try to rebuild my life alone. It would be safe, sensible, the smart choice. But when I looked at Bernardo, really looked at him, I didn't see a monster. I saw a man who'd been dealt a difficult hand and was trying to play it with whatever honor he could muster. I saw someone who'd shown me more genuine kindness in 3 days than Marcus had shown me in 5 years. I saw a possibility. I'm not leaving, I said, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll keep being honest. No more vague answers, no more secrets. If I'm going to be in your life, even temporarily, I need to know what that actually means. I stepped closer to him. Can you do that? Yes. He reached out and cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. I promise. No more secrets. You deserve that. Good. I leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against my skin. Now, tell me about this person threatening you. What did they want? He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. There's a rival family making moves into our territory. Their boss, Vittorio Russo, wants to use you to reach me. Someone told him you've been staying here, and he sees you as leverage. Ice flooded my veins. Leverage how? He thinks if he threatens you, I'll back down from a business dispute we're having. He doesn't understand that threatening someone I care about will only make me more aggressive, not less. Bernardo's expression hardened. But I'm not going to let anything happen to you. You're under my protection now, which means you're untouchable. Any man who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I'd felt in years. So what do? We stay vigilant. You don't go anywhere without security. And I handle Vittorio. He pulled me into his arms, holding me close. I won't let him hurt you, Lara. I promise you that. Standing there in his embrace, I realized something startling. I believed him. This man, this criminal, this complicated and dangerous person, I trusted him to keep me safe. Maybe it wasn't brilliant. Perhaps I was making another mistake in a long line of them. But for the first time in my life, I was choosing something real over something safe. And that felt revolutionary. Okay, I whispered into his chest. I trust you. Thank you, he murmured into my hair. That means more than you know. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the city glittered beyond the windows, both of us knowing that everything had just gotten more complicated, but neither willing to walk away from what we were building together. The next morning, I woke to find Bernardo already gone. A note on the kitchen counter explained he'd had to handle the Vittorio situation, but would be back soon. In the meantime, a man named Paolo would be staying in the apartment with me for security. Paolo turned out to be a mountain of a man with kind eyes and a surprisingly gentle demeanor. He positioned himself by the door, and mostly left me alone, though I could feel him watching me whenever I moved around the apartment. I tried to work on some freelance design projects, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept drifting to Bernardo, wondering what handling Vittorio meant, praying it didn't involve the kind of violence he'd alluded to. I'd spent my whole life avoiding danger, and now I'd walk straight into it for a man I'd known less than a week. My phone buzzed. Marcus, again. This time there was a text. Lara, please call me. I made a mistake. I want to talk. I stared at the message, feeling absolutely nothing. A week ago, this would have sent me into a spiral of hope and anxiety. Now it was just noise. I deleted it without responding. Everything okay, Miss Lara? Paolo called from his post. Fine, just deleting garbage. I set the phone down and returned to my sketch. Bernardo returned in the late afternoon, looking exhausted, but satisfied. It's handled, he said, collapsing onto the couch beside me. Vittorio won't be bothering us anymore." "What does handled mean?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. "It means I convinced him that leaving you alone was in his best interest. No one was seriously hurt, if that's what you're worried about. Just a firm conversation about boundaries." He pulled me against his side. "You're safe now. That's what matters." "Thank you," I said, snuggling into his warmth, "for protecting me, for caring enough to protect me." "Always," he murmured, "for as long as you'll let me." That evening, while we were cooking dinner together, a task that had become one of my favorite parts of the day, Bernardo's phone rang again. This time, he didn't leave to take the call. He answered it right there in the kitchen, speaking Italian in low tones, while stirring the sauce on the stove. When he hung up, his expression was troubled. "That was my father," he said. "He wants to meet you." "Why?" "Because word has spread that I'm keeping a woman in my apartment, and in my world, that means something. It implies a level of commitment that my father wants to verify is real." He set down the spoon and turned to face me. "Lara, I need you to understand what this means. If you meet my father, if he believes we're together, you become part of this world officially. There's no going back from that. You'll be seen as mine, which comes with both protection and danger. And if I don't meet him, then he'll assume you're just a passing thing, and his interest will fade." Bernardo moved closer, taking my hands in his. "I don't want to pressure you. This is your choice. But I need you to know. I want you to meet him. I want my family to know you're important to me. Because you are." My heart stuttered at the intensity in his eyes, at the raw honesty of his admission. "Bernardo, we've known each other for less than a week. How can I be important to you?" "Time doesn't matter when the connection is real," he said. "I've known people for years who mean nothing to me, and I've known you for days, and you mean everything. That's just how it is sometimes." I thought about his words, about the past week, about how this man had shown me more care and respect than anyone else ever had, about how, despite the danger and the complications, I felt more myself with him than I'd ever felt with Marcus. "Okay," I said. "I'll meet your father. But Bernardo, you should know that you're important to me too, however crazy that sounds." His smile was brilliant, transforming his usually serious face into something almost boyish. "Then we're both crazy together. I can live with that." He kissed me then, for the first time since we'd met. It was gentle at first, testing, but when I kissed him back, it deepened into something that stole my breath and made my knees weak. This was what I'd been missing with Marcus. This fire, this connection, this sense that the person holding me saw me completely and wanted me anyway. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bernardo rested his forehead against mine. "You're dangerous for me, Lara. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on." "Like what?" "Like a real relationship. I like someone to come home to who sees me as just a man, not the boss. Like maybe, eventually, a family of my own." He pulled back to look at me. "Too much too soon?" "Probably," I admitted. "But I'm learning that too much might be exactly what I need." We had dinner by candlelight, both of us acutely aware that something fundamental had shifted between us. We'd moved from stranger and rescuer to something more profound, more complicated, more real. And while I still didn't fully understand what I was getting into, I knew I didn't want to walk away. After dinner, Bernardo led me to his study, a room I hadn't been in before. It was all dark wood and leather, with bookshelves lining the walls and a massive desk that looked capable of withstanding a siege. He pulled a file folder from a locked drawer and handed it to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Information about my family, my business, the major players in our world. If you're going to meet my father, you need to understand the dynamics." He settled into his desk chair, looking suddenly older and more tired. "Read it tonight," Ask me any questions. I want you to be prepared." I opened the folder and spent the next 2 hours reading about a world I'd never imagined existed. Criminal families with histories going back generations. These territory disputes sounded like something from the Middle Ages, alliances and betrayals and violence that was both shocking and somehow mundane in its frequency. And through it all, the Piras family, with Bernardo at its head, is trying to navigate between honor and survival. "This is so much bigger than I thought," I said when I finally finished reading. "I know, and I'm sorry to drag you into it, but you deserve to know what you're dealing with." He came around the desk and pulled me up from the chair, wrapping his arms around me. "Last chance, Lara. You can still walk away. I'll make sure you're protected, set up in a new, safe apartment, and give you enough money to start over properly. No hard feelings." I looked up at this man who'd literally rescued me from my lowest point, who'd shown me kindness and honesty, and a connection I'd never experienced before. Yes, he was dangerous. Yes, his world was complicated and scary, but he was also real in a way no one else had ever been with me. "I'm not walking away," I said firmly. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Even knowing everything now, I'm choosing to stay." The relief and joy in his expression made the risk worth it. "Then you're mine," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "And I'm yours. However this works, whatever comes next, we face it together." "Together," I agreed and kissed him again. That night, I slept in Bernardo's bed for the first time, wrapped in his arms, feeling safer than I'd ever felt while simultaneously knowing I was in more danger than ever before. It was paradoxical, perfect, and exactly right. In the morning, Bernardo told me we'd be meeting his father that evening. "Dress nicely," he advised. "My father is old school. Appearances matter to him." I borrowed one of his sister's dresses, a simple black sheath that was elegant without being flashy, and spent an embarrassing amount of time on my hair and makeup. I wanted to make a good impression, even though I was terrified of what that impression needed to be. When Bernardo saw me, he stopped dead in his tracks. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice slightly awed. "Thank you, I'm absolutely terrified." "Don't be. I'll be with you the whole time. And remember, you don't have to impress my father. You've already impressed me, and that's what matters." He took my hand. "Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." We drove to a restaurant I'd heard of but never been to, the kind of place where you needed reservations months in advance, and the prices weren't listed on the menu. The maitre d' greeted Bernardo by name and led us to a private room in the back. Inside, a man who could only be Bernardo's father sat waiting. He was older, but still imposing, with the same dark eyes and strong features as his son. He stood when we entered, his gaze fixing on me with an intensity that made me want to squirm. "So this is her," he said in accented English. "The woman who's captured my son's attention." "Papa, this is Lara. Lara, my father, Giovanni Piras." Bernardo kept my hand firmly in his. "Mr. Piras," I said, offering my hand. "It's nice to meet you." He took my hand but didn't shake it, just held it while he studied me. "You're very brave or very foolish to be involved with my son. Which is it?" "Brave," Bernardo interjected before I could answer. "She knows exactly what my life entails, and she's choosing to be here anyway. That takes courage." Giovanni finally released my hand and gestured for us to sit. "Tell me about yourself, Lara. Who are you? Where do you come from? And what do you want from my son?" The interrogation had begun. For the next hour, Giovanni asked me questions about my background, work, family, and intentions. Bernardo stayed close the whole time, occasionally interjecting when his father's questions became too aggressive. I answered honestly, refusing to be intimidated despite my racing heart. Finally, Giovanni sat back and nodded slowly. "You're not what I expected, but I can see why Bernardo likes you. You have a spine." He looked at his son. "You're sure about this? About her?" "Completely sure," Bernardo said without hesitation. She's important to me, Papa. I need you to respect that." Something passed between father and son, a conversation conducted entirely through looks and body language. Finally, Giovanni nodded. "Then she's under our protection. Anyone who threatens her answers to me personally." He turned to me. "Welcome to the family, Lara. Try not to get killed." It wasn't the warmest welcome, but given the circumstances, I'd take it. "Thank you, Mr. Pyrrhus. I'll do my best." The rest of the dinner was less tense, with Giovanni actually cracking a few jokes and telling stories about Bernardo's childhood that made my boyfriend blush. By the end, I almost liked the gruff older man, though I was still terrified of him. In the car afterward, Bernardo pulled me close and kissed my temple. "You did amazing. My father liked you, which is rare. He doesn't like anyone." I was terrified the whole time. "I know. But you didn't show it. That's what matters in my world, showing strength even when you're scared." He squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now that your father has welcomed me to the family?" "Now we move forward. You keep staying with me, because I'm not ready to let you go. We figure out what this is between us, and we deal with whatever challenges come up together." He kissed me again, longer this time. "Sound okay to you?" "Perfect," I murmured against his lips. "Absolutely perfect." And it was. Against all odds, against all reason, I'd found something real with a man I'd met while crying on Christmas Eve. It was dangerous, complicated, and probably reckless. But it was also honest and caring, and more right than anything I'd ever felt. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when we're at our lowest, when we're vulnerable enough to accept help from unexpected sources. Bernardo had found me crying on frozen steps and had offered me warmth, safety, and eventually, love. And I'd been brave enough, or foolish enough, to accept it. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. And that was more than enough. 2 months later, I stood in Bernardo's apartment, our apartment now, looking out at the city I'd come to love. My things had been moved from my old place, blending seamlessly with his, in a way that felt natural and inevitable. Marcus was a distant memory, a closed chapter in a story that had needed to end. "You're thinking too hard," Bernardo said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. "I can practically hear your brain working." "I'm just thinking about how much has changed. 2 months ago, I was crying on the steps, convinced my life was over. Now," I turned in his arms to face him. "Now I'm happier than I've ever been, even though logic says I should be terrified." "Love isn't logical," he said. "If it were, we never would have worked. A Mafia boss and a graphic designer. On paper, it's ridiculous. And yet here we are. And yet here we are," he agreed, kissing me softly. "I love you, Lara. I know I haven't said it before, but I do. I love you completely." Tears sprang to my eyes. Happy tears this time. "I love you too. Even though you're dangerous and complicated and probably going to give me a heart attack with your business dealings." He laughed. "I'll try to keep the heart attacks to a minimum." Later that night, as we lay in bed together, Bernardo's phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed. "I have to take this. Business." "Go ahead," I said, already used to the late-night calls that came with dating someone in his position. He left the bedroom, and I heard his voice in the study, speaking Italian in low tones. When he came back 15 minutes later, his expression was troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked. "There's a situation. A rival family is making moves that require my attention. I'll need to travel to Chicago for a few days to handle it." He sat on the edge of the bed, his back to me. "I don't want to leave you, but it's unavoidable." "Then I'll come with you," I said immediately. "Lara, it's not safe." "I don't care. You said we're a team, that we face things together. That includes the dangerous stuff." I moved to sit beside him. "Besides, I'm under your protection, remember? I'm safer with you than without you." He turned to look at me, conflict playing across his features. You're sure? Chicago isn't just about business meetings. There might be violence. I'm sure. Wherever you go, I go. That's the deal. I took his hand. Unless you don't want me there? Of course I want you there. I always want you with me. He pulled me into his lap. But I need you to promise that you'll follow my lead, stay close to Paolo when I can't be with you, and not take unnecessary risks. Can you do that? Yes, I promise. Then pack a bag. We leave tomorrow morning. He kissed me deeply. Thank you for choosing to come with me. For choosing this life, even knowing how complicated it is. Thank you for finding me on Christmas Eve, I replied. For stopping when you could have walked past. For showing me that being too much wasn't a flaw, but a gift I'd been giving to the wrong person. You were never too much, he said fiercely. You were exactly enough, and I'm never letting you forget that. We made love that night, with an urgency that came from knowing we were about to step into danger together, that the easy peace of the past 2 months was about to be disrupted. But even in the midst of that urgency, there was tenderness, care, a promise that whatever came next, we'd face it side by side. The next morning, as we prepared to leave for the airport, my phone buzzed. Marcus. Again. This time, the message read, I heard you're dating someone dangerous. Be careful, Lara. I still care about you. I showed the message to Bernardo, who read it with a slight smile. Do you want me to have someone convince him to stop contacting you? No, I said, deleting the message. He doesn't matter anymore. He hasn't mattered for a long time. I took Bernardo's hand. You're what matters. This life we're building. That's all I care about. Good answer. He kissed me quickly. Now let's go. We have a plane to catch and business to handle. As we left the apartment together, I thought about how far I'd come from that broken woman crying on frozen steps. I'd thought Marcus's leaving was the worst thing that could happen to me. I'd thought I was too much, too broken, too flawed to ever find real love. But I'd been wrong. So incredibly wrong. Because Bernardo Piras, with all his danger and complications and criminal empire, had seen me at my lowest and chosen me anyway. He'd shown me that real love doesn't ask you to be less. It celebrates you being more. It fiercely protects you, loves you completely, and never, ever makes you feel like you're too much. I'd spent Christmas Eve crying and alone, convinced my life was over. But really, it was just beginning. And the man who'd found me on those frozen steps had become the man I couldn't imagine my life without. Sometimes the best love stories start with unexpected kindness. Sometimes the people who save us aren't who we expect. And sometimes, when we're at our lowest, the universe sends us exactly what we need, even if it comes in a dangerous package with an Italian accent and a criminal empire. I'd found my home in the most unlikely place, in the arms of a Mafia boss who'd stop to help a crying stranger, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.